Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson. It's my pleasure to have with us tonight Mr. Harry Gross,
Hello.
who's been here many times before and comes, I think, with the perspective of a young liberal person, if that's can be described to your.
I've been called worse.
Right, and maybe I'm a crusty old guy here. So we have slightly different viewpoints. But one of the issues that is before the country, in a way, is money, as it always is. So there's not enough of it. That's the only thing we need more of. Is that love or is it money? I don't know. Probably the government thinks it's money. So money, money, money. How are we going to get money? And the Republicans say, well, the solution is just to not spend so much money. And the idea is, I would say possibly on the left, well, there's a huge amount of money out there that's escaping taxation. And in general, the way that taxes work, it's been a long, complicated story, but they're based on income, pretty much on income. And as the tax code is unbelievably complicated, it's very difficult to go through it. If you have enough money, you can hire an accountant and a smart tax lawyer and maybe avoid a lot of taxation. And wealthy people tend to do that. Additionally, the way the country is working is there's been a pretty good accumulation of money for the wealthy. This is similarly happening, I think, the same way that John D. Rockefeller made money and Carnegie made money in the earlier robber baron era, in that you were starting, the country was using electricity and it was using railroads. So if you got into that game, you could make a huge amount of money, more than a normal person could make, because you were risking, you're doing some risk on getting a very explosive growth. You can make a lot of money. And so similarly, I think Elon Musk doing things, there are all kinds of NVIDIA, if you have stock in this at an early age, or you start this kind of company, you're going to have an unbelievable amount of money. And obviously, the people that there are many people that want that money. Many people want it, particularly the government. And so the idea is maybe we can have a wealth tax. Maybe that's the way to get this money. So there's as one can imagine, if you have the money, you're going to resist the government taking it arbitrarily out of the blue. So sort of a post facto kind of thing. Well, I made all this money, and when I made it, it was easy. There was no problem in doing it. Now, after I have it, the government is coming up with a way to try and take the money away, rather the same way that the government in Argentina, needing money, just took everyone's 401k. They just took all the money. We're just going to take it. We need it. And so there's at least some resistance on this idea. And I will, before I give the football to Harry, and I believe you may support the wealth tax. I could be wrong, but we'll see how that turns out. I thought Elizabeth Warren made a good point on it in saying that, well, there is a wealth tax now. It's real estate taxes. So if you own your house, you're going to have to pay really a wealth tax on land and property. There is a wealth tax. Where there is no wealth tax is on stocks and companies. So that's the idea. Now, I tried to set this up in a neutral way, Harry, and then maybe you can give your thoughts on the subject.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to split the difference here in that I am for a limited wealth tax, but for the most part against it as an idea. The problem that we face
now, Harry,
as a
you were
country.
Supposed to be for it, but that's good.
I know. Well, I'll make the case
I'll
for it.
I'll switch over, and maybe I'll be for it.
Well, no, I'll make the case for it
because
because, I mean, economically speaking, vast accumulations of wealth are economically inefficient. I'm going to make the old school economic liberal argument in that a healthy economy has money flowing through it all the time. It's changing hands a lot. I pick up my paycheck from you tomorrow. I go and I spend that on my bills. I go buy lunch. I go buy dog food,
yes,
right?
right.
And so money moves from the economy, right?
Right, yes.
That money isn't just sitting there. And that is causing economic growth.
Right.
The problem is that once you accumulate over a critical threshold, somewhere in the billions of dollars,
Yes.
roughly speaking, that money no longer does anything in the economy. It just sits there. And it accumulates value, particularly capital assets accumulates value, but it's not doing anything economically. It's economically inefficient in that regard. And when money is spent by particularly billionaires in this case, it's not enough of a percentage of that money to do anything really economically productive. When you look at the old robber barons, the one great thing that they all did was that they gave a lot of money away. They sponsored scientists, artists. They built libraries and museums. Now, they put their name all over all of these things, right? But it meant that their money wasn't just sitting in the bank vaults doing nothing for the most part. Now, a lot of it was a lot of the reasons they did this was tax avoidance.
Yes.
Because the way the tax code was structured, there was a high tax on income. Well, not for the robbers, it wasn't income tax yet, but there were other taxes that they were trying to get out of paying, and so they gave it to charitable things, and that did a good job. So the reason I'm for a limited wealth tax is that I believe that wealth that is inherently economically inefficient should be taxed for the purpose of taking that wealth and getting it back and moving in the economy by giving it to people who will spend it. The government's going to spend it at the very least, right? And by creating an incentive where people say, well, I don't want to be taxed on this, maybe I can find a workaround, a loophole, like charitable giving, like funding public works projects, that kind of thing. That's a net good for society. And I'm fine with letting really rich people get out of paying some taxes if they're doing something good with that money, as long as it's not just getting stored in like the Turks and Caicos, sitting in there doing nothing. The problem is, Warren is absolutely right. Property taxes are a form of wealth tax, right? Property taxes are probably the clearest idea of what Americans think of wealth, right? You have houses, you have land, you have things and property, and that gets taxed. And that taxes does good things, right? That's how most school districts in this country are funded, it's by property taxes. That's why the current movement to abolish property taxes in places like Florida scares me, because that's how we fund our education system for the most part. So that money's going to either have to come from somewhere else, or you're going to start cutting in other places. But that's kind of off the grid here. Where we need to be taxing, where we really need to be focusing, is on capital. In particular, capital gains is a real easy, economically efficient way where we can just make moderate tax increases and make a lot of money. Income taxes don't need to be raised. They need to be nuanced. I think that you should bracket it out a bit more so that as a neurosurgeon, you're not in the same tax bracket as Elon Musk, which right now you are. I mean, that's why income taxes. Yeah, because it caps out, I think, at $200,000 a year of income. But income taxes are easy to manipulate as well. That you can just, if you have a lot of your money, your economic activity coming in the form of stocks, you can just cap your salary and say, hey, I'm only going to make X amount of money a year. I think Warren Buffett does this all the time. He's infamous for this. And then the rest of your income will come from trading stocks. Because at the top tax bracket, I think it's taxed at 40% on the dollar, everything over $200,000, something like that. If they're at the same time, the same equivalent capital gains tax rate is only 15%. So that's a 25% lower tax you are paying to trade stocks and make more money. This leads to what we call tax avoidance. It's not evasion. It's not illegal. You're just paying lower rates, which encourages people to do stock trading, capital trades, rather than doing traditional income. And there's nothing wrong with that. But when 90% of Americans don't own any stocks, that means that this is a very wealthy person's game for the most part. And if you want to bring taxation line that's more efficient, that gets more money in the system, but it's not incredibly onerous on most people, you raise those capital gain taxes 5, 10%, bring them more in line with the income tax rates. And you will make way more money than a wealth tax ever could, because a wealth tax will inevitably kill the golden goose.
Well, it's sort of a complicated story about taxation, wealth distribution, inequality, and the role of, I would say, the tribunes. I guess there's a class of people or politicians. I think that's a fair statement. Their objective is to help the benighted people in the country, and so in that position as a tribune, they wind up getting a lot of money themselves. They got a lot of influence. It turns out to be a pretty good job trying to institute a wealth tax, if I could say that, or at least presenting yourself as a friend of the little person who, in many ways, feels cheated by the world. The system is against his or her interests, and the government is going to make things better. They're going to do that by income redistribution, taking money, and they need money, etc. And it turns out to be a really complicated story about economics, capital. If capital is sitting there, okay, but in many ways, the capitalist is not so touchable. It's in these new extraordinary rocket ship stocks that are going up incredibly, trillions of dollars. Mm-hmm. And if you try and say, well, you're going to have to pay us, I don't know, 50 million or whatever the number is next year, well, you have to sell that stock. It's thinly traded, all kinds of difficulties. The French tried this and then backed away from it. It just turned out to be inefficient, a problem also. Capital leaves. In California, the idea is, well, we're going to tax people, and there's a big rush out of the state. So capital goes where it might be well treated, which is quite a conundrum, isn't it? How are we going to balance the benefits of capitalism with the economic and social issues that we have? So I think it's interesting to point out that so many people do not have big incomes, nor a lot of property or own stocks, or participate in what's going on. And in a way, what's going on is that we're having extraordinary inflation, which makes the value of property of any type go up a lot. And so that's sort of what's, in my opinion, fueling a lot of the boom that's out there, stock markets, I don't know, land, whatever things are, anything that is a thing is more valuable because it's demarcated in dollar bills, and the dollar bills are getting decimated by the national debt. So that's a pretty big issue. I mean, so one of the stories out there is what to do about the extraordinary national debt that's going to presumably crush the circumstance, unless there's some ways around it. But the politicians have a very short time horizon, so they don't commonly pay any attention to this enormous national debt. And in a way, I think the money that was helicoptered in the Corona-19 crisis, what was going on with that? The government is just giving money. Here's a big check, whatever. I mean, there are all kinds of comical stories. This check turns up. The government is sending some huge amount of money because you're going to work every day. They just picked you out. You're keeping your job. You're working every day. So we're going to give you some extra money to encourage that. Well, they have to borrow the money. This big, huge worldwide capital flows. So it's a really complicated situation we're in. And I think the cry for the wealth tax is really a cry for more money to fulfill the government's responsibilities to its citizens, and importantly, to doing something about this massive the massive national debt, which is extraordinary. I think it's over 100% of our GNP, which is really quite a marker. I mean, And every year it's more and more, and that doesn't count other debts that are out there. So we have this huge debt arrangement that trickles through everything. And it could be that if something snaps, some little thing snaps, that we can't quite pay the bill or whatever, and then it could ricochet and take the whole system down.
Okay.
So it's a real spooky arrangement. And obviously the government is going to need more money. The money that it receives we can maybe get into that. This is a huge amount that goes into healthcare. A huge, huge, huge amount. And then it's kind of like a horse race. We could say that way out ahead is healthcare. The next horse race that's coming up on the back turn is military spending. It's still a huge distance away from healthcare, but all of these demands are there, and constituents say, "I want this," or "What about that?" or "What about this?" or "What about that?" And there's the politicians are in this difficult situation. It's a hard road to go down. What am I going to do? I'm here for 2 years or 4 years or maybe 6 years, and I want to make a contribution, but I'd also like to have a feathered nest. I think that would be a human desire, and so they have all these pressures on them, and sort of one option would be to have the government get more money, and the problem is if we continue to go with the older income tax arrangement. We have the Loeffler curve. So if you just tax people, and you're now at your 85% tax rate, then unless there's some ways to avoid it, certainly people they sort of enjoy dropping their income. I don't want to pay the government anything, so I just won't work. I'm going to take the day off, whatever. So that's an issue. And so is there another way to get money? And so it would be property taxes in a way, or wealth taxes. On the other hand, it's interesting to me that California, which is trying to put a wealth tax on their billionaires, also passed, I think, into their state constitution the limit on property taxes. So property taxes they're not nearly as productive as wealth taxes, but that's an issue.
Yeah.
So if you have and also property taxes presumably would hit pretty much everybody. Well, not everyone, but if you had a house, it would get.
Property taxes are overwhelmingly paid by older Americans. When you look at ownership rates of property, particularly of housing, people under 40 don't pay much property taxes.
Which is because that's right. The idea is not for everywhere, not for everyone, not for every person, but there's the idea of the inflation that's taken place in property has made everything go up in value. And so if you have the inflation rate, whatever it is pick your number. It's certainly not 2%, but maybe 3%, some number like that, maybe approaching 4%. And so the value is just accumulative. You're in your house, you bought it, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and the value is just going up and up. So you have something that's valuable. And the question also in regards to taxes is that if you sell property or you sell the stocks, there is capital gain, but the government treats that as an income issue. And
but it's a separate tax entirely, but it's a much lower tax.
It well could be lower. It
is lower. So for example, there are three brackets for capital gains. Top tier, the bottom tier is a 0% tax. Right. I think it's up to $15,000 in capital gains, and that's not taxed at all. The next tier up is a 5% tax.
Right.
And the next tier up is a 15%.
And so the reason I was saying it could be lower is that if you just you made your effort to not get any actual income because it was taxed at a higher rate, and the way that you got your money would be, I'm going to sell some stock, and the rates would be lower, or even better, which is I think very wealthy people do this. They never sell anything; they borrow money.
Yeah.
So, which has a doubly there's a tax efficiency in that issue. So, one of the things going on in this, I would say, card game that's being played between the government and its citizens and extracting money. How do you extract money? What's the way? What you really don't want to interfere with entrepreneurs, people that are Elon Musk is doing whatever he's doing with a lot of government help, actually, with a huge amount of government. I won't get into that, but a huge amount of government help. So these deals are going out there. People are making money. You want all that to happen. You want new stuff to occur. So this entrepreneurial class is an important arrangement. And you've lived in Cuba. I mean, and they're very or been there. Living is probably the wrong word, but you've seen. The Cuban people are great. They're really nice. They've got good issues, and they're really smart and entrepreneurial. And if given the chance, they'll take off. But the system just doesn't comport with that. And you could make the case that some kind of capitalist arrangement, giving people, they're going to be able to have a new car. Yeah. So you have to say, I want you to have this new car because you figured out a way to, I don't know, grow potatoes on wetlands.
I mean, capitalism's wonderful. It is the best way we have found as a species to efficiently distribute resources through a society. The problem with capitalism is that it's apathetic. Markets do not care about you. They do not have feelings. They don't have priorities. That's about efficiency and equal distribution. So what that means is that there is somewhere between any two goods an efficient distribution. So if there is a equilibrium that capitalism will provide between puppies for everyone and diarrhea forever. And the question of society is, the role of government is, how do we regulate the market so that we get more puppies forever than we do anything else, right? What do we want to do as a society? That's where government's role is in the economy. And the reason taxation is important, the reason why billionaires and extreme wealth needs to be targeted in the first place, is because it is inherently mathematically impossible for an everyday person to do that. $1 billion is how many million?
Well, 1,000.
1,000. So if you made $1 million a year and you never paid any taxes, you never spent anything, you made $1 million a year, you would have to start working in 1026 AD to have $1 billion today, just by regular work.
Many people have made $1 billion in 10 years
or in a year. Elon Musk made a couple billion last year. And so my point being is that the level of wealth is unattainable for a normal, hardworking person. Right. It's often rent-seeking. It's often not done by the actual work of their own hands or thought. It's often done by profiting off of the labor of others. And so there is a economic rationale for taxing that, but there's also a moral imperative for taxing that. And for a society to be just and for society to take care of those who are trying to do their best every day, but because of just the limitations of humanity can't make $1 million a day, right? There needs to be some form of redistribution to get that money out there, because that money does good work. The thing about government that is, I think, the greatest failure of government itself is its failure to advertise itself properly. Private enterprise gets way more credit than it deserves for what it does for this country. It is government spending that builds most hospitals. It is government spending that builds the roads. It is government spending that keeps the schools' doors open, including some private schools. It is government spending that got us to the moon. It is government spending that protects us from our enemies. Private enterprise doesn't do that.
Well, I won't overkill. It's really a two-sided story here. And I'll just make the comment, maybe the conservative point of view would be individual responsibility. Well, we're going to create a country where you have responsibility to shine your shoes. You have responsibility. You can't have 6 illegitimate children. You have to do this. You have to do that. You've got to, and then and actually that was, for better or worse, I would say that's the way the country was. Pick your year, 1900.
I don't think the government was mandating how many children you could have. I think that sounds a little totalitarian to me.
If you have responsibility for them. And so, in other words, if you have responsibility, if you better think long and hard, both genders would. if you're going to have a child, you've got to respond. No one else really is going to assume.
I think the orphanages and the tenements would disagree with you at the time, but
well, I mean,
1900 was a bad year to be a human
1899.
being, even then.
Well, I mean, the different places in the country. I think my point is a valid one. Is that the culture has changed substantially. The idea of there was relatively little income redistribution, relatively little, and the idea was if you had a responsibility, everybody had a responsibility. The illegitimacy rates were pretty low.
No, they were not. They were actually pretty high. Yes. Here's the thing, though. You know what was happening for that? Yes, some people did really well, but a lot of people just died. A lot of people just died of penury, of preventable diseases, and abject misery.
Well,
yes, it worked well for some people. It worked well for the elites. It worked well for your ancestors, but a lot of people just died.
Whether it worked or not, that was the culture. My point is is it good? Is it bad? That was the culture. You could say that's what it was. Maybe it was wicked and terrible and awful and whatever else, but that was the deal that was there. And you could say, okay, I'd like to have some. I'd like to go get drunk, and I'd like to have 3 children out of wedlock, and I'm not going to pay any attention to what happens to them, and on and on. I have absolutely no responsibility, anything. No, okay. Well, that was kind of anathema to society. I mean, it might
that was the whole impetus for the temperance movement by the end, because there's a large swath of society that is behaving that way.
Well, there's at least that was the culture of the country, and then that for better or worse, you could say, well, this was a terrible place, but you could see the growth rates that took place in the U.S. You could see how superior the city on the hill economically. This tremendous powerhouse was occurred with, you could say, all these evils that were there. And if you examine the evils here and compare them wherever else you wanted, India, South India, the steppes of Russia, wherever you want to, any place you'd like to pick, Dickinsonian London, anywhere you go, this is just with all its difficulties, it was doing great. And if you really wanted to go back, you go back 1,000 years. How wicked and horrible things were in 1900. How about 900 AD? What was the situation like there? So the humans have been going forward, and I would say there was a lot of sunshine around in 1900. Electricity was coming in, communication was possible. You could get to wherever you were. The amount of money sloshing around was more than it had been in the past. You could say all kinds of minorities, all these bad things were happening, whatever to people. And it wasn't Paradiso, but it was a different place with different viewpoint. And in that situation, there was a very low tax rate, and the government had almost no debt, and the government generally tried to avoid expenditures. So we're going to balance if you go back, the Herbert Hoover kind of thing, we're going to balance the budget.
That worked out famously well.
Well, okay. I mean, so there's no, but that's the culture of the place. No debt, whatever. Taxation, not a problem, not there. Then this extraordinary change happened culturally. The idea is now the government has all these responsibilities, and if you're not happy in the past, well, you would just have a horrible death, I would say, whatever it was. I mean, it's 1900. I don't have any money. I can't find a job. I guess I'll starve or whatever. I mean, I don't know how common that was, but it happened. And so now if you're not happy, the government will do something. In the past, you might have depended on charity, depended on churches, whatever the story was, or maybe to get some, it would be a very difficult situation if you're on the wrong side of the world. But people got through it. Now it's a totally different situation. I'm going to conclude in a little bit here, but the takeaway message is the government's desire for money and the situation they're in. They're really casting around, and we've gotten into a very difficult situation in regards to what a good outcome would be, and it's going to depend on a lot of things. It may depend on Elon Musk. It may depend on it may. In other words, if you can do something, which is extraordinary, isn't it? If you're going to put up in space, you're going to put enormous arrangements to produce AI up there. It's pretty. It sounds clever to me. It's cold. There won't be any issues for that. And there's plenty of sunshine, so you can use solar power.
Assuming your rocket doesn't blow up on the launch pad.
And it has a risk attached to it. So in other words, these people are taking risk. They're going to say, I can tolerate, being tossed out of my house if this doesn't work. I mean, they could say that. And risk takers are there. They're doing this, they're doing that. And out of taking these risks, enormous good things happen. Well, all right. So I'm going to about turn this over to you, Harry, but we sort of touched on this issue, which is the government needs money. And is this the way to get it with some kind of wealth tax? Because there is a tax now on property. So, I mean, it's sort of an expanded property tax arrangement. Is that something to do? All right, I'll let you have the last one.
I would say this again. A general wealth tax is not a good idea. A targeted wealth tax, particularly in the billionaire class, is a great idea. It's economically sound, it's morally sound, and it gets us where we need to go as a society. Yes, Elon Musk is a risk taker, but Elon Musk has a lot more capacity to absorb failure because of his vast wealth than the average person. And the way this country moves forward and advances, the way we have moved forward and advanced, where we have advanced from 1900 on, is we made it easier to fail. We made it easier to fail and get back up again. We lowered the risk for the everyday person to try something new. And we made it possible for people to get up and actually work hard and actually make the American dream possible. But that is no longer the case. And the only way we can get back to that era is by redistributing the gains of particularly the ultra-wealthy that is economically useless for them, but could do incredible work for the rest of society.
Okay, my final comment, maybe I'll make the final comment, is remember capital leaves, and Zuckerberg's partner
then let them leave.
Is now happily ensconced in Singapore. So he got out of and so people do that. They move, and I think the government, to prevent that, is trying to put in a major, if you try and leave the country, we're going to take all your money. So here's
the thing, though. This is the great thing about capitalism. When capitalism is an ecosystem, when a major business leaves, someone else will inevitably step forward to fill that void. Let them leave. Well, someone will do it better and more efficiently and more patriotically.
They're taking their money with them. That's the issue there. And so they're trying to escape, and their tricks.
Then I wish Singapore luck, because the United States still has an incredible cachet in the world. And if you don't want to play ball if you want to play ball in the U.S., if you want to be a part of the greatest economy of the greatest country on the planet, you have to pay your fair share.
So if you have to accept that, which might be, I'm going to stop this, but we're getting near the end of our time. But the takeaway message is, okay, here's the deal. If you come here, you can expect the government to take your $1 billion. And so what people are going to, if coming here, you don't have a relationship with the country to start with. I'm here to make money. That's the reason I've shown up here. I have no connection except making money. And if I make some, the government says they're going to take $1 billion. Well, if I can get $1 billion out, I'll sure try and do it. I'll try and get the money out after I've made it. I mean, so it causes, I would say...
Yes, if you're taxing 100%, yes, but that's not how this works. You're going to the extreme scenario here. I know we're supposed to be finishing, but you were mathematically off the deep end here. The way you would tax $1 billion is you don't tax $1 billion for $1 billion. That doesn't make any sense economically, because then, no one's going to make anything. You want to tax it at 30%. You take $300 million. And then, cool, you just got $700 million.
My point is, if in fact you're sitting here and you have no real connection to the country, and you have $1 billion, and it appears the government is going to take $300 million of it, or whatever it is, the natural inclination would be to figure out, how can I not pay that?
No, that's called greed. And here's the thing.
That's called human behavior.
Maybe one of the same, but my point is that a reasonable person can understand that 700 is greater than zero. And a net profit of $700 million is a win-win. And if you can't understand that, if you have to insist on a zero sum, I have to have it all, or I can have nothing, then you do not deserve to be doing business in the United States of America.
All right. Well, I'm happy you castigate humans such as they are, but that's human behavior, Harry. And you can talk to a tax accountant or anything. How can I not pay taxes? That's how can I not give the government any money? That is a very hardwired human story, and that's part of the situation we have. And so that's some of the government's problem. Nobody wants to give the government money, whatever, and when they take money, it has some negative impacts. And so sort of the idea would be to try and make this as benign as possible, recognizing the fact the government needs money. And so how can you get it in the least assaultive way? And have to remember that people don't like to pay taxes. And even if they've made $1 billion, they don't like giving the government $300 million. Well, you've got the $700
That's why it's law and not a voluntary system.
And so people try, I know that. But
and that's why you craft a system. Again, this is about dealing with tax avoidance, not tax evasion. This is why, I'm against a general wealth tax, because it does cause evasion. You want to just raise things in line so that no matter what you do, you can still make money in this country while paying a fair, equitable share.
Well, okay. All right. Well, those are good thoughts, Harry, and we'll have to discuss this some more. So thank you.
Thank you.